1949's The Third Man review and thoughts. So, this might be my last video for a little while, and it's probably gonna go by kind of quick. Gonna try to talk faster. Too stubborn not to do this video since I did promise it earlier in the month, finishing off Noirvember, but my physical pain is a problem. So, yes, yeah, I might make some comparisons to the first three entries of Noirvember this year, which are, of course, Maltese Falcon, Double Indemnity, and The Postman Always Rings Twice. Be sure to check out my videos on those movies as well. And yeah, so this is the first British noir film that I do this month, and also the last, since the month is drawing to a close. But yeah, it's the British actually did do a bunch of noir films like the Americans did. And I will say, when I found out this one was set in Vienna rather than anywhere in England, I was wondering, like, wait, is this, like, are the British filmmakers trying to, like, avoid, because, you know, there have been times when British people with authority have tried to avoid admitting some of the wrongs done by the British Empire and such, but no, a lot of them, apparently most of them, is what I understood from research, are set in British cities, the way that the American ones are set in American cities. This one is very, it makes great use of post-war Vienna. You know, it really was, I should say, I mean absolutely no disrespect to the people of Vienna or Austria in general, you know, and I don't really think the movie is trying to make it out to be just, like, irredeemable as much as it's saying, look at the toll World War II took. You know, there's a line very early on about how Vienna, although I suppose it's possible that was added after someone from Vienna, perhaps someone with authority, like, complained about, like, what are you doing to our movie? This is gonna destroy our tourism, you know. But there is a line very early on where it says, yeah, like many other cities around, I think they say Europe specifically, you know, it was badly bombed during World War II, and, you know, yeah, this was not the only, you know, Vienna was not the only place in the world that was struggling after World War II. And yeah, they do a really solid job. It feels so foreign to, you know, British and Americans, at least of 1949, and yeah, there's a lot of great photography of the city, and, you know, yeah, we see some places that were really destroyed, we see some places that are still intact, and the score handled by, I want to say it's pronounced zither, this instrument, yeah, very unique, and mostly works. There's a couple of places where it feels a little bit too jaunty and light for the scene we're witnessing. I think might have been good for a couple of those to have been different instrument, but by and large, it really works, and it definitely does place you right there, like the cinematography also does. And yeah, being a noir, you know, this is one of those that have this kind of expressionist, you know, yeah, cinematography with stark lighting. I want to say it's called high contrast lighting, and, you know, there's a number of Dutch angles, and I think that pretty much covers that. Yeah, it really, you get a real sense of what Vienna is like, perhaps especially to an outsider, but also to the people who actually live there, or did at the time. And the fact that, you know, you have these, you know, there's this thing about how there are multiple zones of Vienna, and, like, German is one of the languages that, you know, it's you're gonna have an easier time connecting with the people there if you speak German, and the protagonist, you know, Holly Martin, something like that. Let's go with Martin. That part I'm confident about. He does not speak a word of German, so sometimes he's able to get someone else to translate. Sometimes things are subtitled for the audience's benefit, but, I don't know what to tell you. He can't read those. This is not that, what was it called again? Fatal Instinct? And yeah, it does have a very alienating effect, which is quite purposeful, of course. And I do really appreciate that they do give a voice to the voiceless. Some of the people living there, like there's this one part where, reflecting upon some of the kind of police state stuff that happens, a local who's clearly old enough to have experienced the war and remember before the war, this liberation is not what I expected. And let's see. Yeah, the movie does a really great job of putting us in the shoes of Martin. He is very much this everyman. He seems like a good guy. He goes to Vienna because, his friend of 20 years, who he hasn't seen in 10 years, contacted him, said, there's a job opportunity here, come, let's, and he's really looking forward to seeing him. When he arrives, he's told, oh, he just died. Harry Lime, who he was there to see, died. You literally just missed him. And so he goes to the funeral, sees a couple of other people there, none of whom he knows. One of them is, like a cop, and he tells him, Harry, that guy you've been idolizing, by this point, Martin gets really drunk and talks about, I was so lonely before I met Harry. And then the cop is like, oh, he was like scum of the earth, like, holy crap, your friend was the worst of the worst. And this, of course, upsets Martin, who apparently already doesn't like cops, which makes me already like him. And yeah, he sets about trying to clear Harry's name, because some of the stuff that the cop says, he doesn't just keep it vague. He says, no, there's some specific stuff he did. And yeah, Martin sets about clearing his name, and we have a movie, and yeah, it's super relatable. Like, it's not a school friend for everyone, but, most people will have at least one person that they care really deeply about. And if you lost touch with them for a little while, and then you hear from them, and then you find out they died, and then someone says, oh, I've been investigating them for a while, just, like, terrible, terrible person, yeah, you'd be really, really upset by that. And I don't know if absolutely everyone would try to, like, clear their name, but you'd care. It would be something that really, yeah. So, great hook. As with a number of other noirs, including the other three that I mentioned, yeah, there's a dead guy from early on. And I really appreciated that, this in this one we actually really get to know him, but after he has died, so that's also something that sets it apart from the other three. I suppose I should say, I realize these are not the only 4 noir movies to exist. I like to compare and contrast. These are the 4 I'm the most familiar with. And yes, I know some people are not going to love the fact that I only did 1 bogey movie this entire month, and it wasn't even one of the Bacall ones, but I couldn't let Humphrey Bogart this entire month. But yeah, it's legitimately, gripping watching this investigation. And yeah, I really appreciate, this was back when movies that handled investigation, it's meat and potatoes crime stuff, but it's handled well. This was back when those wouldn't, like, jump to ridiculous conclusions. Well, sometimes. But no, like, he talks to some of the people at the funeral, and yeah, finds various eyewitnesses. Some of the stories don't completely add up or match with what the others are saying. So, you get a sense that there's definitely something here that's, yeah. And it is very much an environment where, we're told almost immediately there's a black market, thriving black market in Vienna at this time. And yeah, a lot of the people he meets are, I suppose, yeah, there's 3 types of people in the world that this movie creates. There's people who are familiar with, like, aware that it's going on about the black market, and they're kind of keeping quiet. They don't want to get involved. There's the people who are very much involved, not all of them to equal level, and I do appreciate it does humanize them. Like, several of them are like literally like, you gotta eat. This is the only way to live. The moral grays, again, big in noir cinema. And then there are the cops who, yeah, there's no one 100% innocent and ignorant in this. And before you judge the people who say they just don't want to get involved, you might be like, oh, what is, shouldn't they try to stop crimes if they know about them? The cops are not 100% like, you pretty quickly get a sense like, okay, this, you know what, I might also not follow the law if I lived here. These cops, yeah. And I think that does pretty much cover the review itself. Hold on. I feel like there's one more thing that I really wanted to say. I talked about cinematography, writing. Yeah, the acting is on point, and yeah, I think that might be what I have to... Yeah, it never loses one's interest, and there are great scenes of tension. Right, now I remember. Dialogue. This does not have... Maltese Falcon is pretty much the gold standard of the ones I've watched, at least. Certainly the ones I've talked about, of, like, really clever dialogue, And yeah, none of these others quite match, and they're not really trying to. And this one certainly, it feels like where the acting is somewhat stagey in Maltese Falcon, and I think it's an American versus British thing. Here, it feels quite a bit more naturalistic, and it's not so much exactly the words being spoken and the way stuff is phrased. This is the only of these 4 videos that I did not open with a quote or paraphrase from one of these movies. But where in something in Maltese Falcon, it's often people sitting, sometimes standing, looking directly at each other, eye contact, and talking, like measuring each other up and trying to figure out, how much does this person know? How much should I reveal to them? Can I work with them? This sort of thing. And so it's very much dialogue, both writing and delivery, and the eyes, the face, those sorts of things that really bring the scene to life. Where here, we often, there's multiple scenes where characters that Martin is talking to will stand with their back turned. And it's not necessarily that it'll start out like this, but the moment he mentions Harry Lime and says, I want to know about his death, they'll try to, like, casually turn their back to him. And, try to, it's still like, they're trying to size him up, for sure. But they've got their back turned, which of course means they're worried that he's going to see something in their face and know something that they don't want him to. And the camera, on multiple occasions, will be so that you'll have the face of the person that Martin is talking to in the foreground, and off in the background, you'll have Martin. Both of them facing the camera so we can see what Martin can't. And in order to make this more visually engaging, a lot of the time they'll be in an area where, the set design is phenomenal. There'll be some stuff for them to interact with and for us to look at, and these areas will tell us something about the character. There's one where Martin remarks upon, "You sure have a collection of collectibles or something along those lines. I'm not sure that's the direct quote, but yeah. And yeah, they'll be like fiddling somewhat nervously with the thing, and like it's very much this thing of like you could tell, okay, you don't actually need to be adjusting that thing right now. That's if Martin says, hey, can we face each other, they'd be like, no, I have to deal with this thing right now, and there's no room for us to be facing each other while I'm doing that. It's very much, yeah. And let's see. Yeah, I quite appreciate multiple people independently of each other and not necessarily even on the same side on all this. Multiple people will tell Martin, you should go home. This is not something you want to get involved in. So from very early on, from right away, you know there's something more. Like at the very start, there's characters saying, oh, it was just a car accident. But, like, I'm not necessarily saying there was something more with the death itself, but clearly there's something more to know about Harry Lime that, some people are very reluctant to tell Martin. And that brings us to the spoiler section, so I'm just going to get rid of that thing, and here we are. Yeah, so there. And there we go. Yes. So yeah, for those who are familiar with my videos, I'm going to spoil absolutely everything in the movie here. So this part, the rest of this video, is very much for people who have watched the movie. Oh, right. Yeah. I absolutely love this movie. I rate it 3 third men out of 3. But yeah, I really thought it was a great twist that Harry does turn out to still be alive. Actually, yes, before I get into that, I did want to talk about, so I've talked about the gender politics of the first 3 of the movie that I've done this month. Going to talk some about this one. This is by far the least misogynistic of these, even more so than, or less so, I suppose, than The Postman Always Rings Twice. And it is very much, like, technically Anna isn't even quite a femme fatale. Like, she's hiding something and she's more involved than she's letting on and this sort of thing. But she's not seductive and manipulative. She genuinely is just, a young woman caught up in this thing, and, she's in love with Harry. She doesn't want anything bad to happen to him, even though she knows he's done at least some things wrong. And, yeah, that very much is it, and yeah, let's see, and yeah, there at the end when she just walks past Martin, there's this kind of tragic quality to it. They were really getting along until, he really turned on Harry, which apparently used to be her job, and I do think, I do really appreciate the love of, Anna and Harry, and, the element that Harry does write, he like draws a heart and writes their first letters, and I don't know if it's like, if he's being facetious, because it's not really gonna, I don't think he's doing it to change Martin's mind, but yeah. Yeah, once, Martin is no longer on Harry's side, she doesn't want anything to do with Martin. And, yeah, I quite appreciate that, like back then that was about the greatest victory of, jilted woman could be granted. There were other movies where if a woman, went against a male protagonist, she would be punished, even if he was the one in the wrong. And I do appreciate, like, technically here, nobody is really in the wrong. Like, of course she loves Harry, like, just the passport alone, and yeah, at the end of the day, Martin can't abide by what Harry has done, The cop thinks that it's so not nice, he showed him twice. Once in person, even. and then starts taunting about like, oh, the book, Western, wow, snake charmers in Texas, huh? Just like, okay, dude, we get it. Just like, yeah, just I've said it before, I'll say it again. Don't give a Brit like reason to like poke at your insecurities. They're really, really good at it. Just like, yeah, this cop walked so Jimmy Carr could run. Okay, yeah, plastic patty, whatever. He could pass for British, but yeah. Let's see I think that pretty much does cover gender. Yeah, I would definitely say I don't feel like the movie is saying, oh, women are irrational. The fact that she never goes against Harry. I'm pretty sure it's just saying, love hurts. It scars. It mars anyone. That song is made infinitely funnier with the full Philharmonic Orchestra. But I think that does cover. Yeah, I thought it really worked. The scenes of like Martin seemed like he didn't have the most personality before he met Harry, and then he started like imitating Harry. He's using his phrases, and on at least 2 occasions, Anna accidentally calls Martin Harry. Let's see, and right, I appreciate the tragedy of Anna confronting Martin, like trying to save Harry, ultimately isn't able to, and yeah, I really appreciate she has some quite choice words, and that is something some of what she says I found to yeah, that is absolutely accurate. One of the things that stereotypically speaking, I'm not saying it applies to everyone, but a lot of women, I believe the majority, one of the things that they hate the most is if you betray them or someone they care about. And yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And again, I'm not saying, and the movie's not saying that it was wrong. Like, Harry is terrible. He killed children. And let's see, I think that does bring it around nicely to Harry himself. So yes, we have this thing of, yeah, he fakes his own death, and it's basically just to get the cops off his back. And I'm not sure it's said directly, but as far as I can tell, he wanted Martin to be the new, like, not necessarily face to like everyone, but yeah, like for a while Harry was able to hide what he was doing. The cops realized now he had to fake his death. Martin is supposed to be the new person who can go around somewhat more publicly, talk to people, arrange things, and I guess eventually that will also he will have to fake his own death. And it is very much this thing of, and yeah, I really appreciate, like, they are showing this is not sustainable. Like, you can't keep doing this. This is, it's already gone wrong, but you're not accepting that and stopping, and some of, a number of criminals were specifically caught because they didn't stop when they were ahead. Some are addicted to the rush. Some genuinely, yeah, there's various reasons. Anyway, the let's see, but yeah, he thought, well, we used to be great friends. I'm sure Martin is the same person today that I am today, and that is the thing. Like, there's a lot of extremists who genuinely don't understand, because they're so used to their perspective, they can't comprehend other people's perspective. Like, if Harry hadn't invited Martin, he would have gotten away with it, like, literally. That is, like, because Martin's the one who keeps pushing for it. Like, the others don't speak to the cops, but they'll talk to Martin and give just enough that Martin is ultimately able to, I mean, Harry also reveals himself to Martin, but yeah, he wouldn't have done that to the cops. But yeah, he thinks that Martin is going to be okay with this whole thing. And I really appreciate, like, Orson Welles, amazing actor. He really was just it's unreal. Like if this is the first time you're hearing his name, you gotta watch. So like, I hear some of the last stuff he did was not great. You either die a superstar or you live long enough to see yourself become yesterday's news. And he was one of the people who, understandably, was not very happy with becoming, yesterday's news. But if you watch some of the really old stuff that he's done, just yeah. If you have not watched Citizen Kane, this is a public service announcement. This is an intervention. You're watching this because I care about you. I want you to have watched that masterpiece. Now, when he approaches Martin, it's like, yeah, it genuinely is like a schoolboy who's meeting a friend of his again after a while, like jovial and jolly, and it doesn't take very long for it to turn sinister. And he's talking about like, I've got a gun. If they find, I'll shoot you. You'll fall off. They'll think it was just, an accident, And I also really appreciate the fact that, he goes up to the Ferris wheel and he's like, kids used to ride this, but now they can't afford to. And then he hands, he pays for the two of them to. And as far as I can tell, like, it wasn't subtitled, but it seems like, the woman taking the ticket is saying, you're paying way too much. This is, I can't, I don't have enough change to pay you back the difference between what you paid and what you actually owe for this. And he says, keep it, keep the change, because he has more, which, like, logically he could be giving that to children. He could be cheering them up, but no, he just, yeah. And I do also think, there's some, like, the fact that he specifically chose to take them there, it wasn't just for privacy. I do think he was thinking, just in case I might have to, because why did he bring a gun if he didn't think he was going to need to use it? If he's just walking 10 steps out of where he's been hiding, no, he on some level was thinking in those terms. So even as he's, thinking, oh, Martin could be a great, he could help me out with this, he's also thinking, maybe I need to take him out, And actually, like, essentially it is just the fact that he, Harry himself is also, Harry is felled not only by, the emotional connection, never mind. Part of what leads to Harry's downfall is that he can't completely just not care about Martin, because if he had killed him there, yeah, he would have been okay. Like, yeah, the cops have been told that he's still alive, but that's not enough, if Martin hadn't lured him out by saying, let's talk. And, the fact that, Harry gets so close to talking to Martin there in the cafe, that's also part of what, ends up killing him. And I really love the bit where, I'm glad that Orson Welles was able to put his foot down and say, I am not running around sewers like that. They had to, like, build sets, apparently. Right, and I'm not going to spend forever on the thing that he claims about, what was it, 30 years versus 500 years, and that whole thing. I want to say it's IMDb frequently asked questions, possibly IMDb trivia, but one of those explains the actual context of that, and I don't think we are supposed to take him at his word. This is like one of those where, let the past die, kill it if you have to. That's not the message of the movie. That's what the villain is saying, and the movie's telling us that's how he thinks. That's not what we're supposed to think, And it tickles me that, there's a lot of American media where, taxation is theft, and it's like, worst thing in the world, as if taxpayer money doesn't pay for, like, amazing things. Like, I just wish that they would say, I don't think our taxpayer money should go to this. But no, a lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them are, like, if you pay taxes, you're a sucker. That's terrible. And then you have this where like the bad guy is the one saying, isn't it great how I don't even have to pay taxes off this black market stuff? That's just, yeah. The British culture is just different than the American. I'm not saying they love taxes, but I do think they have a bit more of an appreciation of, perhaps because of like NHS and stuff like that. But yeah, the let's see, right at the very end when the cop drives off, his license plate reads ACA 2110, which I don't know. I guess they thought that it would, it wouldn't be until the year 2110 that the Affordable Care Act would come into effect, which, fair enough. I'm not sure it will exist by then, not if Trump has his way in the second term. But let's see, I think that might be about, yes, so the sewers. 100%. I'm glad that they weren't able to force him to run around actual sewers. They had to build the set, but yeah, the fact that he is, he ends up like, it's a great picture of, because like nobody wants to have to run around in a sewer unless you're 10 and you're hoping maybe you'll meet Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Other than that, and this is where, it's where he's ended up, and it's even where he dies. He doesn't manage to get back out, and I do think that's very purposeful, because you could easily see how, no, he manages to lift and crawls up and then is lying there. Martin runs up, shoots him. That's easy. That's not a... But no, he specifically does die in the sewers. Everybody else who's in the sewers in the scene is there for him. It's not where they end up. They're there to stop him. They're willing to go into the sewers to kill him. He's there because he has no other options. And that bit where with I really, really love cinematography like that. The bit where he is like hearing their voice and hearing the voices shouting as they're getting closer. They've pretty much surrounded him entirely, and we just see the dark. We don't actually see a person there, because you could easily have had like a person runs in, Harry shoots him and buys himself a little bit more time. But no, we specifically just hear. So it is like, from a sound perspective, he is surrounded, even though we're not seeing it with people. We're only seeing it with these dark passageways, the doorways, I suppose they could be referred to as. And let's see. Yeah, I do appreciate, Harry is shot by Martin. That is, like they don't show the bullet hitting, but like I feel like that's got to be what happens there. There are a lot of movies around this time that implied the violence rather than outright show it. And yeah, he got to that point. He started out saying there's no way Harry did all these things, and he ends up firing the bullet that finishes off Harry. Like, he would have died anyway, and there was definitely no escaping. But yeah, it was Martin who fired the bullet, and I also really love the fact that, yeah, like, Martin could have just waited. He could have shouted it to the cop, he's here, he's not putting up a fight, and the cop could have either shot him or tried to arrest him, I guess, Yeah, let's see. Yeah, it is slightly amusing when, the cop who's like a fan of Martin's books, he like runs up and, Harry shoots him. And because it's a shot that shows almost his entire body. Like, I guess it's possible it was the leg, but he like clutches his chest, if I recall. Not, he doesn't seem like he was shot in the leg, and there's no bullet hole because they didn't really do that back then, which, fair enough. This was around that same time where if they had to, I swear I'm not making this up. You can look it up because I know it sounds ridiculous, but if they needed like squibs on a wall, what they today it would be squibs on the wall, back then they would fire guns at the wall. So I appreciate them not wanting to shoot the actor in order to accomplish. But yeah, the fact that, you know, he's like a gun is fired and he's like looking shocked and he keels over. Like, I can't help but riff, like, I can't believe you shot me. That's so shocking. I'm gonna fall over. Just like, yeah. I don't know why. It's obviously, you know, he shot him right in the and which is lethal. You know, I'm not saying it's not, but let's see. I think that does pretty well cover all of everything. Right. Yeah, really creepy with the. I appreciate, like, the landlord has several scenes, and he does seem like, no, he legit just doesn't want to get involved in this. He has an honest living, you know. He doesn't want to, you know, ruin the, and his poor wife too, you know, who, like, badass, actually stands up to cops. Although there is one time where it's played off as a joke, like, you know, this woman is so annoying that the cop has to just close the door and get away from her, you know. But yeah, like, she's making a lot of sense, you know, and yeah, he ends up dead because of, you know, yeah, this, you know, Martin continues to push for this, and Harry doesn't want loose ends. And, you know, this kid, his son, who, you know, earlier, you know, the thing with the ball, and, you know, it seems like a really sweet kid, and he's convinced that Martin did it. And, you know, it's one of those things where, I mean, technically it might not have happened if Martin hadn't, you know, I feel like if Martin had worked with the cops from the start, you know, that might have, you know, maybe they would have been able to, well, I suppose, no, honestly, yeah, thinking more about it, they probably wouldn't have been, because they certainly don't protect everyone. But yeah, you know, once the kid is convinced that Martin is the killer, he keeps saying murderer in German, you know, and people, like, turn and stare at him and just keep saying murderer, murderer, just really creepy. And, you know, it's, the fact that the kid is, like, smiling, I think is technically, like, you know, not the best acting in the world. I feel like it adds to the creepiness. I'm not trying to be, like, an apologist, but the fact that the kid is, like, just, yeah. I think that does cover absolutely everything. Right, I really appreciate the you know, that's again one way where Anna is very unlike Femme Fatale. She has a strong moral core. You know, she realizes that her freedom was the price of Harry's life, and she's not okay with that. You know, she doesn't leave on the train. Also, gorgeous shot, probably the best shot in the entire film, although has heavy competition. But we don't see the train, we just see all the smoke and the light, like, really, you know, there's that thing about, you know, smoke adds volume to light, and that's what we're seeing. Fantastic. Like, I don't know if it was a budget thing, I wouldn't rule it out, but just gorgeous, you know, like, holy crap. Yeah, let's see, that brings us, yes, yeah, Anna, you know, she refuses, and it is one of those things where, like, you know, you can appreciate, you know, he, like, Martin did just want to help, but it's also one of those things where, like, you could have told her that, like, if you really think that it's the right thing to do. Like, I'm not saying it's 100% always the case, but a lot of the time, if you think something is the right thing to do, you should probably tell the person that, you know, because the reason he doesn't is that he knows she won't approve of it. You know, he's trying, it's this obnoxious paternalistic thing of, like, he thinks he knows what's best for her. And yeah, you know, like, she would have never been able to live with herself if she found out at the end, you know, if she found out later that, you know, yeah, Harry died and it's actually because of the passport that you got. That was why, you know, that was the price for Harry's life. And, you know, yeah, ultimately, you know, Harry ends up dead. Martin didn't get anything out of it. He, you know, he's never going to have a positive relationship with Anna. and yeah, just, an appropriately downbeat ending for a noir. Not all noirs have it, but yeah, like, genuinely, he went there hoping for a job, hoping to reconnect with a friend he hadn't seen in 10 years. Then he thinks, oh, maybe this girl and I can end up together. And by the end, he's lost. He has, yeah, he has none of it. It was also slightly amusing, the part where, for a while he's like, okay, fine, I'll leave tomorrow, and then this one guy comes, oh, we would love for you to give a presentation, and he's like, apparently not giving a great one, and the guy's like, I can't believe I tried, you always gotta vet, that's the thing. I guess depending on his, I wonder if anybody watched, because they do say, oh, propaganda, we could, I wonder if anybody watched this and thought that they got, like, a copy that was edited to remove the propaganda, and he gave, like, this really rousing presentation or something. But yeah, the 100%, the guy who arranged for the presentation, after the presentation, he's like practically face palming, and actually possibly face palming, and he's got the face of someone who, like, wanted to both sides an issue and invited a conservative on to present their point of view on this whole thing, without checking to see if, oh, maybe this person is gonna make absolutely no sense, is gonna just, preach hatred and encourage something truly terrible against minorities, and, yeah, ended up not liking so much what the guy had to say. And it's too bad, because the vetting is actually easy. If they are conservative, yeah, every negative thing I just said about them is accurate.